Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. It's still the off season, but that's all right. We are here to chat F1 with you. Rob, how you doing, man?
Yeah, not bad. We're here to chat F1, what we've been able to find of it. I mean, I think you titled this in our show, in our notes that we work from. If last week we had Matt Trumpets, and trumpets are synonymous with the blues, then this week we have off-season blues because there's not a lot going on.
So sad.
But yes, we have plumbed the depths of the tinterweb and have got maybe, I'm not even going to say it's a bumper news and social, but we're going to ring it out for all it's worth. We've got the video vault opens and closes again today. We've got 100 seconds of DRS with listener Laura, which was fantastic.
Fantastic.
And then some random waffle about what might happen next week. That's
Let's jump
probably
in,
our
man.
lot, right?
Let's
go
do it.
for it.
So I was looking around and I found the power rankings through the first 12 races, so to the summer break. And if you saw them, I'd be curious your thoughts. But for me, as we started looking, Rob, obviously, number one, the most dominant driver we've seen in quite some time, Max Verstappen.
I was, yeah, I mean, I was a little bit disappointed he only got a 9.2. What is it? What does this guy have to do to get more than
a full point ahead of number two, where it gets interesting. Fernando in second, which I thought was, we've talked about the Aston tailing off a little the last few races. But man, it does make sense when you think about, especially the delta he has to Lance. I know you think Lance is the third best driver on the grid, but that delta is pretty big from Max to Fernando, and then it gets interesting for a couple reasons. I was with a friend last night, and we were chatting about this, and he kind of got Lewis in third at an 8.0, and we can leave the numbers at this point because the biggest gap was the Max to Fernando. But were you interested to see who was fourth?
Yeah, I was just scanning down this, and I kind of did a double take on that because me and you have always championed him.
Very much so, very much so.
But I didn't expect the power rankings to reflect that. I actually expected the McLaren boys to be higher up this list. And also because we're talking to Matt last week that it's a boring prediction that Lewis and George are dependable and they're going to bring Mercedes home in best. The rest, I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a Mercedes or a McLaren driver next. But who did my eyes find, Brian?
Alexander Albon
Woo!
in fourth. I love it. He's dragging that Wish.com steering wheel around with a flat floor made out of Play-Doh. And it's like amazing, man. I was surprised a little bit, but it makes sense. Ahead of Lando and George, who were tied for fifth. Charles and Oscar, as Rob said, the McLarens you see in a Ferrari, A. And then fascinating to close the top 10, we have a pair of teammates. And we've already mentioned a Red Bull. We've mentioned both Mercedes, both McLaren, a Ferrari, a Williams. Like what's left? An Aston Martin. What's left? Alpine. And so you get the French connection, 9 and 10. And I was surprised Pierre was ahead of Esteban. That didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I'm a big Gasman fan.
Yeah, and also they've not really had the best of seasons either,
No.
so I was surprised to see them. I thought that's done a little bit of an injustice to Carlo, actually, being behind both of those two, but...
I agree. There were three drivers I thought I was surprised to not see here, and surprised in a different way. So number one, Carlos, I thought would have been potentially on the list. Two, Yuki, I thought could have been on the list. Yeah. He regularly puts that Alpha Tauri in 10 or 11, and that thing looks like a garbage can. I used good words. And then the biggest note has to be Checo. How can your teammate be leagues ahead of everybody else and you don't even make the top 10?
He's getting marked down massively based on, I think, his comparison to Max because of the car he's in. Because like you say, if you take a step back and just see where he is in the driver's standings and the points he's accumulated, he can't even get on the top 10 and nudge ahead of either of the Alpines. That's a bit harsh.
And these are power rankings. So again, it's not points. It's kind of the way that different media outlets rank you through the year. He didn't even make the top 10. He was below a Williams and two Alpines.
I know. It's got to hurt, hasn't it?
A lot.
Talking of things that might hurt if you fall off it, I guess. Oscar Piastri.
Good segue there.
Do you like that one?
No.
Oscar Piastri put up a tweet or an Instagram post, or maybe all of the above, I don't know, which was about how he was giving up four wheels and taking up two, and there was a picture of him on a motorbike during the break. which in itself is probably nothing. But then o- Oscar's mother comes in and answers, "Oh no, you don't. Move away from the bike." Oscar Jack Piastri, full name, so he's in trouble. My heart can barely cope with cars, and the interweb lost its collectiveness because she almost got as many likes on that as Oscar's original post. So gotta love it when the mum gets involved, right?
You do, you really do. I mean, it's just a good reminder that no matter, how famous you are or how rich you are or how popular you are, you have at some point had a mom. And so if she's around, she will tell you to watch out for certain things. I love that. I love that. It is officially silly season, although it has not been silly yet. And I always hear it in the fake Fernando Alonso voice from Lollipop Man. Silly season, boys. And so, there are people who do not have contracts signed yet. And F1 actually put out the sort of tentative 2024 lineup to date. And there's a question mark on Mercedes and Lewis's spot, but we all, I think, believe Lewis will be back. Toto makes it sound as so. So, I mean, I think that one's pretty much solved. At Alfa Romeo, there's a question mark next to Valtteri, the driver next to Valtteri, which I think we all, and we'll talk about in a second here, but F1 Formula Uno expects Joe to sign his new Alfa Romeo contract. I think most people wouldn't be surprised if he's not at Alfa Romeo, so I think that's a pretty good yes. Then there are some question marks, though. The Haas boys, which we've talked about here being question marks. Interestingly, both Alpha Tauris are not signed for next year. I'd be super surprised if Yuki is not back in an Alpha Tauri, but I don't know about Danny Rick. We'll hold that, put a pin in that. And then Logan at Williams. Logan the Sergeant at Williams. However, Rob, I'd ask you this question. What do you think the biggest domino is for silly season? And I have an idea, but I'd like your opinion first.
I guess hypothetical domino or
Yes.
domino I think would happen. Okay,
Hypothetical.
Hypothetical domino is Lewis doesn't and he retires.
Okay.
Because he doesn't think he's got a chance of this car's going to take too long to get into a winning position.
Interesting.
And therefore he just decides to call it quits because he's loving being a movie producer with Brad. So, and then that would cause like ridiculous scampering around, I think, if you had a Mercedes seat open.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen. That's why I said that's my hypothetical one. Oh, man. I mean, that's AlphaTauri and Williams. None of the three of those teams are world beaters that if someone doesn't renew, that there's going to be a huge scampering. So I don't see many dominoes there, really. The only one would be if bizarrely Zhou didn't sign, because that team's going to become Sauber. And I heard some weird thing that Sainz had already signed a pre-agreement.
For the Audi?
Yeah, which is what this team's going to become, right? Alfa Romeo loses its sponsorship, which is the Sauber, which gets into bed with Audi, doesn't it? Isn't it this team?
Yeah. I mean, they're Sauber now, but they'd become Audi.
Sorry, they're Sauber now, but yeah.
Yeah, no, 6. Or 26. So, yeah. I agree. I agree that's a possibility. I actually am looking at Checo. And we'll talk a little bit about Checo in a minute. He has a contract.
Okay. He has a contract, yeah.
But
okay.
I actually look at the Danny Rick Checo as the one that I'm the most curious about. Because I mean, you look at every team, Max is going nowhere, never, ever, never, right? And you talk about Lance and Fernando. Fernando's getting along swimmingly there. At this point, he's cheering the team on after pit stops. Lance is the owner's son. He's going nowhere. Oscar and Lando look like one of the best young duos on the grid with a car that actually works. We love Alex at Williams. We kind of are both like assuming Sargent will be back, but even if he's not, I don't know if it's a big deal. I hate to say that because it's great having an American on the grid, but we'll see. We think Valtteri and we think Joe. We'll talk a little bit about Charles and Carlos in a second, but Pierre and Esteban are in at Alpine. They've had leadership changes. It feels like just build some stability. You got drivers under contract who have talent, according to the power rankings in the top 10. Haas, I think we both agree we could see changes. Kevin's not performed the way we'd anticipate this year. Nico's qualified well, but what's he done in the race? And to me, it comes back to Danny Rick and Checo. And what do they do? And if they hold form and Checo stays, does Danny Rick drive for AlphaTauri for a whole season next year?
I mean, I was kind of looking at it. When does Checo's contract go out to? At the end of next year?
I think end of next year, yeah.
So, I mean, if Danny Rick isn't a disaster and is proven his worth, I don't see why you don't keep him in whatever it was, the Hugo Boss Bulls Racing
Toro
team.
Bosso. Do you think he
Toro
wants
Bosso,
that
yeah. So
though? Do you think
no,
he didn't
no,
want it
but I think
before, but he took it
he didn't
now?
want it before, and then I
Right.
think he's understood what half a year off the grid tastes like, and there's been I think, a forced veneer to that smile when we've seen him in the paddock as a
Interesting.
non-driver. Like, I'm here, but I'm not really
Like when he
driving,
waved
and
to
I,
us in Canada, that was
yeah, that
forced.
that
Okay.
was that was all forced. But now he's a driver. I think if you had that taken away from you once before, and they say hold station, one more year in Toro Bosso, and then the Red Bull seat is potentially yours, I think you drive it.
Yeah,
I
that's a good point.
don't think you try and upset the apple cart and say, well, I'm not going to drive then. If this is a rubbish car, I'm going. I think if he goes again, he's done.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right.
So,
Um, so as
all
we
right, what else
said,
we got on contracts?
Joe's expected to sign his contract. There are stories that Charles already signed an extension to his contract. There were a couple different outlets that covered this, and they talked about the fact he had talked to some other teams to kind of get a feel, but it would be a 5-year contract with some options toward the end. There are rumors it could be over $220 million in the totality of the extension. Again, these are all rumors. But it says it's a firm 2025 and 2026 agreement with options for 27, 28, and 29. And so it's kind of exciting. I hope it's true. I think very highly of Charles. I know a lot of people have come down on him over the last year or so. The end of last year when he became a qualifying genius but couldn't make it happen in the race and made mistakes. And this year Ferrari's been off form, so it's been easy to kind of throw some slings and arrows.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it though. The question about Carlos and the rumors about Audi. There have been a lot of people tied to that Audi seat, from the old, like Sebastian Vettel, to the old, like Fernando Alonso, to someone who's not as old in terms of Carlos. So I am curious about that. I feel as though Carlos has gotten a lot of grief recently, and I don't think it's earned. But I don't
Oh,
know.
so here's the out there one that's going to take a couple of years to come to fruition. So Carlos has signed that deal to go and join the Sauber team in 2026, powered by Audi. Valtteri goes the other way and takes the Ferrari seat.
I like it. He's run
Because I
Ferrari
don't
engines for a while.
if they sign Joe up again, and I see him as one for the future, we've got to admit that Valtteri isn't getting any younger. But I think Valtteri has still got enough class to be worth a decent crack for somebody. If you're, unless Ferrari got somebody else lined up, and they're going to go for a youngster alongside Charles. But do you see them dropping Joe, and in 26 it's a Valtteri and Carlos lineup?
I don't know.
I
That's a
don't think
great
they do that.
question.
So then I start getting worried for our boy Valtteri as to where he's going to end up.
Oh boy, that's a great
Anyway,
point. A great point. And then the last thing on contracts, this was a rumor at first, and then it seems to have been confirmed, but not in the way you'd expect. Was that Checo has done himself a big disservice by falling 125 points behind Max, because apparently there's an aspect of his contract that his salary or bonuses, Checo's, can be adjusted downwards with that size of a gap. And at first, people are like, "Oh, this is BS. That's not true. There's no way it's going to happen." But then Helmut Marko came out and said, "Oh, we're not going to do that," which kind of confirms it's a possibility or an
yeah.
option. I'm like, really? And so, fascinatingly, some people on Reddit then took this apart and had a really good perspective that Max, let's take the flip side, Max actually gets bonuses. And in 2019, he got a $44,000 per or euro probably per point bonus. And so he's on pace for 500 points. They believe, again, this is all, it's hard to know. There's a lot of, it's not as transparent, the contracts in F1 as it is in like the NBA. But $50,000 a point is what people believe his bonus is this year, which would be $25 million bonus on top of it. And there's other things: $10 million for the championship, $250,000 for a race win. Again, grain of salt, but according to this one Reddit user, Dutch Pack, Max would be on pace because of the race wins, the points, and the championship, and his $40 million base salary, which we do know. He'd be on pace for an $80 million in euros, or 80 million euros season. Holy crap!
So I've got it. With all these celebrities now taking a stake in sports businesses, franchises, whatever you want to call them, I think now it's time to tap up Max to see if he wants to invest in an up and coming podcast. We'll even look. We could be the. Oh, I was going to say we can be the dirty side of the Max, but that sounds a little bit wrong.
Yeah,
So,
it does. It
yeah,
does for
okay.
sure. Well, should we do a little stats about Max?
Let's do it.
All right, we're gonna go back to an oldie but a goodie here. Sap stats. Rob's going to do a little bit of a Max edition, and then I have one after that. Rob, kick us off, man. This is a pretty interesting investigation you did.
Well, yeah, driven by boredom and a lack of F1. There's been a whole debate about how dominant Max is this year, and Matt brought it up last week about the McLaren, and he kind of doesn't want Red Bull to do it this year because his favourite was that McLaren year that couldn't even do it because of a DNF caused by a backmarker. So I was like, I wonder how much more dominant he is than last year. So I went on the Tinterweb and I started summing up all the deltas from races for last year. So if Max won by 20 seconds, I put 20 seconds on the clock. If he won the next run by another 10, it was 30 seconds overall. Every time he didn't win, because actually remember, he didn't actually win all the races last year, subtract the delta back off that. The one thing I didn't subtract off completely was DNFs, because that would completely ruin this stat if I had to say, oh, he was ahead by 30 seconds, then he DNF'd, so I've got to take an hour and 26 off his time. So that would kind of skew it. So if I look at going into the break, this might not be wholly scientific. I had a calculator in hand and was just plugging the figures in. He had an accumulated 50 seconds clear of the field. So that's his few second positions, third positions, like seventh or whatever it was at Silverstone. Even though he didn't win all of those and fell quite far behind, he was still able to end up being 50 seconds clear of the field at the break. This year, it's a little bit further ahead.
50 seconds is far. It's worse?
50 seconds clear of the field, yeah, it's quite a bit more than that. If I now sum up all the races this year with his deltas that he built to second place and the, 2 that he didn't win? Yep. When he didn't win, he didn't get dropped by lots. So, yeah, this year he's now at the break 2 minutes and 6 seconds clear of the field, which when I then looked at it, I said, okay, the 2 races that he DNF'd last year weren't even like really, really dominant ones. They only actually give him an additional 9 seconds of delta. So if you subtract that back off again to kind of say those there, then that's still 1 minute, whatever it is, 54 clear, or that's not right, is it? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is, he's accumulated a much bigger delta over the field this season at the halfway mark than he already had last year. So I mean, he is winning. It doesn't just feel that he's winning lots and lots of races by a long way. He really is.
Normally this here little podcast is more this, but this week we had Rob doing math, and we're this.
Oh, I need to do a champagne spike somewhere.
No, well, don't break any more trophies. That was awesome. That was awesome. A great way to show that dominance that we're seeing from Max this year. I found a stat that I thought was interesting. There is now one driver, and one driver only, to be in the top 20 youngest drivers to ever make their the first podium, and then in the top 20 oldest drivers to have a podium.
It can't be Max both times this time.
It is not. Although Max is the youngest driver to ever have a podium. But that wasn't the question. The question was who's on both lists. Fernando is obviously the answer. I mean, if someone made it this year, you can only look at Lewis or Fernando to be the answer. And so Fernando is the 8th youngest podium stander in the history of F1 at 21 years, 7 months, and 23 days at the Malaysian GP in 2003. And then when Rob and I were cheering him on in Canada, because of the dirty side power in Montreal, Fernando is the 19th oldest podium stander. I guess standing makes more sense. At 41 years, 10 months, and 20 days, at Montreal 23. So that's a pretty cool stat, a pretty good bookend. And he's still going pretty strong. And if they could get that car going like it was in the first few races of the season, I think he'd keep going with more thirds and fourths as he finished, felt like every race to start the year in a couple seconds. So, I don't know. It didn't surprise me when I saw that, but it was fun to kind of see.
Yeah, and the other thing I was looking on that was like how many years does he need to keep racing for and getting podiums to kind of move up the list? And let's just say it was a different era back in the day. He has zero chance, I would say, of making it to the top. We have...
the top 9 are all from the 50s.
They're all from the 50s. And
everybody's old.
Everybody raced into their late 40s or early 50s, so that's not going to happen. But there's 44-year-old Snap Off, which is, I think, number 7 on the charts. That's only another. He's almost 42 now. Just a couple more years of racing. I could see him lasting out to the next
Yeah.
regs and potentially being in a. All he's got to do is he doesn't even have to dominate all year, does he? He just has to snag one jammy podium and he can move his way up the list. I'm
Right. Like
sure it's a stat that he's really aiming for.
if he came out and said, "I'm actually trying to beat Luigi Fagioli, who was 53 years old in 22 days in the France GP in 1951." 53 years old. I want to call him something, but I won't. Okay. Anyway, time for the video vault. Let's get this bad boy opened and talk about videos. The door swings open. We get ready to talk about videos. I have 4 videos that I want to talk about that are fantastic, all from YouTube. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri take on Twister and more British summer games on the McLaren channel at 6 minutes. It's, you know what? I should have said Fantastic for All. It's not too bad. It's an all right video to watch. The highlights are 2 things.
Come down.
Yeah, I know. I screwed that up. The highlights are 2 things for me. One, I've never played Twister with another guy as a grown-up, beyond as a kid. Have you?
No, not as as a family, but not another. No, no.
Yeah, and I have, however, played Twister with another adult who it was a woman, and my wife was there, and got very inappropriate. Anyway, and it wasn't my wife. Yeah, moving on. The chemistry is weird between Lando and Oscar, and I can't figure it out. Have you seen this video, Rob, or any of the McLaren ones this season?
I haven't seen. I mean, I've seen some of the McLaren ones this season,
so
but
I'd
not seen
like your take
one.
on this, right? Lando and Carlos famously had the bromance Carlando. They got along fantastic. And actually, Carlos seems to get along with Charles fantastic. I'm thinking it's Carlos. Lando and Daniel did not get along at all. I mean, they did all those videos. It felt like painful to watch the two of them hang out. Just different guys, right? They didn't, I don't know, reading into it from the outside, I'll read into it and say they were just different people. It feels like Lando and Oscar is still a little forced. Like Lando's not really having fun doing these things and Oscar's trying. I could be reading again between the lines, but what's your take on sort of the 2 young guy chemistry going on at McLaren?
I think you see you keep a closer eye on these bromances than I do. I think
I do. Hashtag Pukey.
And yeah, exactly. I hadn't seen this, so I'm going to have to watch this video now and see what I can think. Because I thought they looked like they were getting on okay. Oscar seems like someone that just gets on with anybody, and Lando didn't seem to look like he's under threat at the moment. I don't know. I'll have a look.
It just feels like Lando's there making a video as opposed to there hanging out with his teammate. And I recognize there's a fine line between a guy getting paid and has to show up and do his media duties. But anyway, a couple more. Max Verstappen learns how to drift, featuring Mad Mike. This is on the Red Bull Motorsports channel, not the Red Bull F1 channel. 8 minutes. I really like this. It already had 1 million views when I found it 2 days old.
So if it's on the Red Bull Motorsports channel and he learns a new skill that he can then apply into F1, is that a breach of the cost cap?
I don't know what the catering situation was at the thing as well, so I don't know if it's a double DNF with extra food.
I'm guessing Mad Mike is not on the F1 employment, so if he teaches Max some tricks where he can drift around the sand of Zandvoort, we've got to keep a close eye on that.
Agreed. It was good. You should go watch it. Then the youngest to oldest challenge on Grill the Grid Formula One channel. This has been out a couple of days now as of the recording. It's not bad. It's definitely worth a watch. It's fun. I just enjoy watching the drivers try to solve problems like naming race winners and champions and so on. However, the note here is, they film a lot of these before the season. Most of them. Poor Nick. Nick's on the board. They don't mention his name at all, and there's no way to edit it out. So there's a DeVries that's going up and down, and they're moving around. They never once mention him. And then they show the ages on the right side at the end, and there are 19 drivers. There's no Ricardo nor DeVries. And I'm like, just a good reminder that that poor Nick's not on the grid anymore. And the last one, F1 photo finishes, but the gaps keep getting smaller. Again, in the F1 channel, 8 minutes. Okay, it's a good video to watch. I don't understand a couple things. Whomever made this, I'm sure they're listening. It's like they had 20 and they tried to get them in 8 minutes, and it was never fully clear on each one what position it was for. And like occasionally, and he came across 6th. I'm like, who cares? And so there were a lot of these midfield battles at the line where the gap was small. And I mean, yes, there were a lot of them I remember, and it was fun, and I enjoyed it, but it was just not really well done. And I'm thinking to myself, how about for the lead? And then the next day, and just like yesterday, they dropped 14 times races were won on the final lap. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. It will be
Sounds
covered
like content
for
next week.
Exactly. There's a couple of them. The C-squared challenge just came out for Ferrari, and I might have found something with Alpine drivers from the Castrol channel. I'm working on it. And with that, we will close the video vault.
Oh man. Right. Okay, this is sort of randomly dropped in because we just sort of found it and thought it was fun. But there was a post up that I think you found because you sent to me, which is
Motorsport.com.
Yeah, motorsport.com. Who wins this race? Verstappen in an AlphaTauri, Sargent in a Red Bull, Tsunoda in a Ferrari, Alonso in a Williams. I've given this some thought. Have you got an idea? Have you got somebody that you think is going to win it? Because I'm going to do a 3-2-1, and then you say who you think is going to win.
I'm ready.
Do it. Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Yuki.
Oh!
So I would love to know what people listening thought. I hope you yelled out loud on the 3, 2, 1, and if you didn't, do it now. Okay, thanks. And so this is so well done. This is the reason I put this in, not just because it's summer break and we're filling a couple minutes of content here. This is really well done because Max is so dominant, right? Is it the car that wins? Matt Trumpets on a week ago would tell you it's the car. And he would say Sargent in the Red Bull. I mean, he may not say that for sure, but he said the car is the big piece.
He said drivers are starting to influence less and less and less.
Correct.
So if you're a semi-decent driver in a fast car, I think you're going to be better than an amazing driver in a bag of bolts.
And this is so well done because they took the best today, Max, and put him in the worst car, AlphaTauri. They took Alonso, who's clearly near the top, and they put him in one of the cars near the bottom, in the Williams. Then they took one of the lower end drivers. I hate to say it, but you're still 20th best in the world, Logan. But so they put Logan in a Red Bull, in the Red Bull. And then the one that we both chose, Yuki, and here's my rationale. A really good driver, we think, finishing, as we said already, dragging that AlphaTauri to 10th and 11th many times. And then you put him in a Ferrari, which is not the worst car on the grid and pretty close to the Red Bull. I thought Yuki's talent in a car that's not as good as Logan's Red Bull, that he could pass Logan, that he could beat Logan.
Yes.
And so that was, for me, the mix of talent and car that shined.
I basically got there in the same way that you did, which is I don't see that Max and Alonso have got enough to wring extra performance and lap time. I mean, it probably all matters about which track we're at. We didn't go into any of that.
How much prep
just
time do they have?
On face value, I've said if
what tire
Checo
compound?
Can't,
just kidding.
Yeah, if Checo can't get the maximum out of that car that we see Max get out of it, then I think Sargent gets even less out of it and allows Yuki to use his more talent in probably a not too far off car. I mean, far enough, but yeah, that's why I went Yuki. Well, for that, look at us agreeing.
Well, can I ask you one more question again for everyone listening along? Max in the AlphaTauri, Logan in the Red Bull, Yuki in the Ferrari, Fernando in the Williams. The question I then had is, we kind of agreed Yuki over Logan. Max in the AlphaTauri or Toro Rosso and Alonso in the Williams. Who do you have of those two? I mean, that's a really hard one
just because of where Alex can put that Williams, and I think Alonso could get more out of it. We've never seen an AlphaTauri get anything wrung out of it. So Max is going to get the AlphaTauri above where Yuki normally pops it in as 10th or 11th. He can probably half the deficit and get up to 5th or 4th in the AlphaTauri. I think Alonso beats him in a Williams.
No, see, I disagree. And I'm often accused of not being enough of a Max lover. I think Max beats Alonso in a Williams. I think Max in an AlphaTauri somehow figures it out. I think he's that good, but... Okay. All right. We'll never know. I wish we could. I wish there were a way we could do that. Can we get ChatGPT on it? All right. A couple fantasy updates. Shifting gears here. There was an article, Fantasy HQ, F1 Fantasy Headquarters. I love this. I saw this and I read through it, and it was 5 things we miss F1 Fantasy 2022. So it was a retrospective from this year's game to last year's game and the things we miss. And F1 Fantasy HQ, you nailed it. Here are the top 5 things they missed from last year. 1, points for beating your teammate. I loved that. I liked the idea of picking. There should be a benefit to having the better of the 2 drivers in a team.
Agree.
2, no overtake. Well, I'm doing these in reverse order, so technically I was 5th. And then 4th, no overtake points. I hate the overtake points. How many times have I complained about it here?
All the time.
All the time.
Drive me nuts with the amount of times you complain about it. But they put a perfect final sentence on this synopsis where they said, in a game designed to stir up more support for the drivers, F1 created a mechanism for fans to celebrate failure because now they want to watch qualifying and hope their driver bins it.
Yes.
Maybe starts from 20th in a good car because you'll do much better working your way through the field. It's nuts.
It's nuts. Followed by live scoring. It was faster and better last year. Now it calculates for hours at a time. And 2, getting towards the top here, price limit for the 2X Turbo Driver DRS boost. And then 1, streaks. Everybody, Andy Taylor, whatever his fantasy team name is, Andy came on here and talked about missing the streaks when we started and prepped for this season. And we had Rob talk about it as well from fantasy. And so, like, just Fantasy Hub Rob and Andy agreed the streaks missing was a big deal. I didn't love the streaks last year, but now with the way the game works, I wish we had them back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, couple last notes on fantasy. Much mistaken. If you're listening, you're still in first at the halfway point of the season, 3,699 points. Send us a note. You might have missed last week's episode, but if you don't get the t-shirt. Second, we are launching an F1 Survivor game on the Discord server. The Discord is linked in all the podcast platforms. Click it, join. The winner gets a t-shirt. The way it'll work is you pick a winning driver and a losing driver. As long as they both finish the race, you pick it correctly, you move on to the next week. You can only use everybody once. It's like a knockout pool in football. There are exactly 10 races left. You have to pick 2 a race, 10 teams, 2 drivers a team. Everyone gets used. If you make it to the end, and there are others who make it all the way through, we'll do a coin flip amongst the potential winners for the t-shirt. But this is quite a game that Mark from Detroit came up with. And so we're launching it on the Discord.
If it looks like...
Yeah.
I'm just going to force something on you that I haven't even spoken to you about. But, so what? You launched this Survivor game on me last week, and I loved it. So you're going to love my idea as well. We've got to come up with something better than a coin flip, something F1 related. Maybe it's, I don't know, knockout quiz or something. Coin flip's a bit lame. So I'm not sure we'll even get that far. But
yeah, well,
let's have a think of it. We've got 10 races to think about it.
We'll think that's a good point. We'll think of something better for if there are still people alive after 9 races. We'll have something we'll add in for the last race. And last fantasy note, Real Fantasy Sports. If you guys aren't following on Twitter or on the actual internet, realfantasysports.com. realfantasysport.com. I got it right there, Dagan. Just had the auction for drivers and soccer players or footballers, as it might be. Now it's time to start borrowing and loaning of players and getting ready for F1 to come back. So join, check it out. I kicked some butt in the auction. I don't know, Rob, if you noticed. You were busy yesterday. I somehow made it to my computer.
I was, but bizarrely, what that
did
meant
you do well
was,
on football?
What I ended up doing was that because the player base doesn't buy up all the players, which means there were thousands of players still left over after the auction. I went in like a Hoover this morning and hoovered up everybody for one RFT that I could find that I thought was semi-decent and left over. So I didn't end up spending stupid amounts of money trying to get Max Verstappen.
That was me, by the way. I don't know if you saw.
Yeah, there was only one F1 driver left that I could own outright, and that's Logan Sargent. But still, I got him for $1. So who knows? But now you can. The way it works, you don't have to own them to be able to use them. So if you miss the auction, you haven't missed out. We'll have to see how the advantage of holding the rights. You basically hold the image rights almost to the people that you bought. So we'll have to see how that pans out over the game and as we watch it evolve. But it's been good fun so far. So I hope it takes off, and wish them the best of luck with that. I'll keep picking my teams and see what happens.
For sure. And as Rob mentioned when we started, we have 100 Seconds of DRS with Laura. She is amazing. It's a great conversation. Why don't we turn it over to the recording of us talking to Laura now?
Box.
We are incredibly lucky to have a 100 Seconds of DRS guest with us this week. Dirty Sider Laura has joined us, and we were just chatting for a couple minutes But for the benefit of everybody listening, Laura, like, tell us a little bit about how you got into F1.
Well, actually, when I was a kid, I remember my dad watching Formula One. He's a big Alonso fan, and I remember watching it and like looking at the TV, going, "This is so boring. Like, why people just driving in a circle? Like, I don't get it." And then I got stuck during COVID and couldn't really leave my house due to like a chronic illness. And then I just kind of stumbled upon one of the races, and I got sucked in completely and watched the whole thing from start to finish, and then continued to watch basically every single race since.
Yeah,
So
you were telling us just before that you have a tech degree, and it was kind of that
yeah.
second time when you were housebound. It was really kind of the tech side of things that drew you in. So I'm interested because
Mhm.
while I appreciate the tech, I couldn't imagine turning on the TV and seeing tech, if that makes sense. What? So you sit down, you turn that race on, you're watching it. What kind of got you interested? Going, oh, there is more to this than driving around.
Basically in Denmark, where I'm based out of, one of the commentators we have here, or one of the like hosts that usually do the pre-race stuff, he is a former Formula One driver, and basically the sides of things that he can tell that a normal like sports commentator probably wouldn't know because he hadn't been in a car. Um, it was just kind of fascinating, and it kind of just drew me in a way that I think if it had been like just a plain like sports commentator, it would just have been boring for me. So,
So, as you said, you're in Denmark. I have a very
mhm.
important question, and I don't know if you heard the episode when Rob and I were in Canada for our first ever in-person race, but there was a track TV commentator who was messing up a lot of names. At least we think he was. And so we'd like to know, is it Magnuson or Magnuson? And if it could be
Neither.
Magnuson, neither.
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured.
Mhm.
If we say Magnuson, will you give us a pass because we know how wrong it is and we're leaning into the wrong way? Or
I think actually, if you get it the right way, it's Magnussen. It's actually easier for you. So,
you
What
think
was
it
that?
would be easier for us, but
By the way,
well,
who's the XF1 driver then that does your commentary?
oh, I think his name is Nicholas Kisa, but I'm not sure that's how you pronounce his name. But he's basically, I think he did 3 or 4 Grand Prix starts. It wasn't a lot, and it's back in like a long time ago.
Back
Um, I
back in the
think
times
he
of the
was in the
dinosaurs.
late 40s, round of like around there. But he did a couple of races, and then he did a lot of endurance racing and a lot of other things. But he's very famous here because he did the 3 or 4 Formula One races. So yeah.
so in addition to really getting into some of the recent F1 and the tech and all the things you're passionate about,
Hmm?
for those who may not be on YouTube, Laura's got an amazing Ferrari shirt on right now. So I guess I'd be curious. There it is. Are you driver focused, team focused? Like, who do you root for this season in F1? And how do you kind of, manage against the alliances you have? Like, who do you cheer for and why? I guess is really the question.
I'm very both in many ways. Like my favorite driver is basically Alex Albon. So I'm very like rooting for him all the time. I'm also, like you can tell, I'm a Ferrari fan. A struggling Ferrari fan, but like a Ferrari fan nonetheless. I'm also a huge Alfa Romeo fan. Um, and then like I'm a big Mick Schumacher fan because I like Mick Schumacher.
Yes.
And I think he does.
I
So
think she's just saying this because she knows you two are the last Mick
I'm
Schumacher
actually
fans
not.
around. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Mick Schumacher, but I mean, I think you're just trying to be nice to Rob, aren't you?
Absolutely not. I actually forgot that you like Mick Schumacher. Um,
So I've got to ask them because so I started following Ferrari, back at the same time that probably your Danish driver drove back with the dinosaurs. But it was a time where Ferrari weren't fantastic. But because I was a kid with Ferrari, all you wanted was a Ferrari when you were a kid. So I had Ferrari posters on my wall. So when I got into F1, I was like, oh, they have a Ferrari team. I'm going to follow them. So it took a while before that paid dividend, really, in terms of watching success. You found them during COVID, essentially, which means I mean, you've never really experienced any great results. So what drew you into Ferrari? Is it the branding? Was it just, what kind of first
uh,
grabbed your attention and said, I'm a Ferrari fan?
So I grew up in a family where my dad really likes cars, and so do I. I have always had like cars on my walls. I've always like I was really ill for a while when I was in like the sixth grade, and I read an entire manual on how like car engines work.
Wow.
Just because, and then like I was obsessed with Top Gear.
Yes.
Nice.
All of the episodes, I loved it. And like it was my entire personality when I was a teenager. So like I love cars and like I love Ferrari. Um, so it was like a no-brainer when I went into like Formula One. It
Yeah.
was like, oh, cool, Ferrari is a team. Like I'm gonna support them. So,
Same as me. There's so many similarities. I
I
can't
know,
believe this.
but I would like to say one thing in my defense. Laura said when you were a teen, Top Gear was your personality. I am far from being a teen, and it's still my personality, and so it's okay. I'm just saying, you know.
yeah.
I do. Do I walk around quoting Stig facts to random people throughout North America? 100%. They don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, um, so I guess I'd ask you this season. You look at 2023, and you look at the year so far. Like, what are your hopes for the second half? Are you, with your Ferrari fandom, hoping for some battles for the best of the rest beside Max? Are you hoping someone takes it to Red Bull? Are you written off Max? Like, as the champ, like where are you at from a fan perspective for the rest of the season?
I think from a fan perspective, I hope that somebody will like come out and challenge Max because it's getting really boring to have Red Bull winning every race. And not just Red Bull, Max winning every race because the dominance just kind of makes it boring to watch. Especially when he's like 30 seconds ahead and everyone else is just like not even bothering anymore. But for me, I would hope that also the rest would kind of like get more exciting for some reason because for now, I'm falling asleep watching races at the moment. And I don't want to be like falling asleep during races because I love racing and I love motorsport. So yeah, I hope it gets more exciting, but yeah.
So has the recent kind of resurgence of McLaren and throwing my new man crush Oscar Piastri into the mix, is that making it more interesting for you, or in a way because it's now another team to take more points away from the others, so there's almost a bigger gap with the best of the rest? Can you tune out the Red Bull and enjoy the best of the rest battle, or do you prefer the upfront battles?
I can definitely tune out like the Red Bull battles. I'm not a Red Bull fan. I don't like them. And I think it's more to do with like the fact that I think the way that they handle things is just very far from how I would handle things, and I can't like kind of merge those two things. So for me, I pretty much like just tune out the Red Bulls and just like but yeah, I think
so we had Matt Trumpets on this week, and he said, as boring as it is, it's probably Mercedes are nailed on for the best of the rest. Are you in that camp, or can Ferrari pull something out of the fire in the second half of the season?
And Rob's hoping you say yes, so that the two of you can cheer each other on. But
I've got by the way, I've got a big basket of straws here that I'm clutching at. But yeah, what do you think, Laura?
I'm gonna have to agree because the way Ferrari does strategy.
Or doesn't do.
I say this as a Ferrari fan. I saw this thing on Twitter the other day where somebody said something around that they don't think Charles can be a world champion with Ferrari, and I kind of agree with that because the way that they keep putting him on strategies that are like make no sense and just kind of like pouring more nonsense into his races, like it's not happening, and I'm really sad about that because I also really like I love Charles. I think he's doing a really good job. But like when your team is like working against you, it's just not happening.
And then managing to equally screw over both driver, which really takes exceptional talent, right, to mess it up that badly. Because in the races where Sainz has got the pace and is asking to be let pass to go and take a run at someone else, they're like, no, stick to the plan. What, the plan where both of us ruin our tires now? I mean, it's...
Exactly.
Every time Ferrari comes out on white tires, on the hard tires, and I'm a tire nerd, so obviously the compounds will vary, but every single time they come out on hard tires, I have like a tick. And I'm like, why would you do that? How often does Ferrari come out on hard tires and it doesn't work? Are we the only ones on hard tires? Checking, get back to you. I mean, always yes. The answer is always yes. It's always only them.
Exactly. I mean,
Oh,
I went to the Madrid Formula One exhibition, and they actually have like a whole wall just with tires. And I was standing there like, oh my God, tires.
yes.
And my little sister was with me, and she does not like Formula One. I dragged her there. And she was just like, this is actually cool. Like, why is tires cool? And I was like, yes, I told you they were cool.
See, Rob, you are in the minority here, so just you can zip it. Tires are awesome.
Exactly.
No, they need changing to be awesome. Actually, you semi-agree on this, Brian, because you're in this camp with me that they're just too durable and all
Yes,
the they're boring at the moment because all of the compounds all merge into one. If a soft can
Mhm.
go as long as a hard, then to me they've messed it up.
I
Exactly.
agree. Yeah, they do need their. Well, I mean, I'm a believer that there should be enough deg where you have to manage your strategy. And
Mhm.
some teams want to go two stop versus one or three versus two. Great. Stick to your plan and go for it. And we can see people on different strategies and safety cars having a say on whose strategy worked or didn't. It adds luck and sort of strategy to it. But I agree. If Max can go out on a set of mediums and go basically the whole race, or George in the last race on a set of softs as long as longer than some people did on the hard, then what's the difference?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, tires. So exciting. I'm loving it. Well, we're actually sort of foreshadowing some of the questions in the 100 seconds of DRS, and I won't ask about tires because we got that one already. But I mean, I'm excited to have you do this. Laura, are you ready for the 100 seconds of DRS?
I mean, as ready as I can be, I think.
You will do
uh,
fantastic. Rob, are you ready to time us and set us in?
I am. I'm all set and ready to go, so I will count you in a second. And good luck. We will begin the 100 seconds of DRS in three, two, one, begin.
Laura, your favorite F1 track.
Interlagos.
Best young driver in F1.
Oscar Piastri.
What's your favorite cheese?
Manchego.
Most commonly visited website.
I think that's Twitter.
Oh, yeah, probably. Or X, I guess it's called now.
Yeah.
Ferrari or Ford.
Ferrari.
Mario or Luigi.
Luigi.
Oh, cats or dogs.
Cats.
Okay, this is one of my favorites. If you could add a James Bond type gadget to an F1 car, what would it be?
A catapult seat.
Excellent. Favorite non-motorsport sport?
Football. Or soccer, I guess you'd call it.
Thank you. I was going to ask, which I'm assuming it was soccer. Best F1 driver of all time in your mind?
It's a tie between Niki Lauda and Jackie Stewart.
Excellent choices. DRS, good or bad?
Undecided.
What is your favorite food?
I think tapas.
Excellent. For the drivers, would you prefer mustaches or mullets?
Mustaches?
Very good. Is it Nutella or Nutella?
I'm Danish, so Nutella.
Rolling starts or standing starts?
Rolling starts.
Are you an early person or a late person in the morning?
I mean, I'm always early, but I always wake up late.
And that's time.
I like the way you tackle it. It's like I'm a morning person, but I'm going to be late to whatever I'm doing. So that's good. Oh, thank you for doing that. That was great.
Yeah, definitely. But considering, like you were telling us about your collection of books, millions of books on F1, into the telemetry, really gone all in on it, and you have, because judging by the two favorite drivers of all, or best drivers of all time, you've probably been jumping into the record books, haven't you? That was a cracking answer.
A little bit, yes. But also, I just finished watching the Jackie Stewart documentary, and it's amazing. So he's an incredible human.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one. I got to watch the. I don't think I watched the Stewart documentary.
No, he's a fantastic human. He was basically not able to read or write, and he kind of just bullshitted his way through F1.
Wow.
And he did it in a very good way. So.
Amazing.
Wow.
And your other one was Lauda, right? Is that what? No, I'm trying to
Lauda.
remember.
Yeah,
Lauda. When we did a Veil's Tale on Nicky, and it was another great person in terms of the way he managed and handled himself. And after his airline had the situation, I became an even bigger Nicky Lauda fan. I don't know if I could be any bigger after the way he kind of stood up and said, "No, we're going to make sure we do this right." And I'm like, that's amazing.
I mean, one of the first books I found about Formula One when I started watching Formula One, it was actually Niki Lauda's biography, To Hell and Back. And I read it as an audiobook while I was working in a lab. And I remember just like sitting down in the middle of an analysis, just like leaving everything, just sitting down and being like, whoa, this human is incredible. And getting really touched by like a lot of the things that he kind of talked about. So that was really cool. But also, yeah, I like history. I'm a history nerd, so I like to like deep dive into Formula One history.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So if anyone else would like to give a shot at doing as well as Laura did on the 100 Seconds of DRS, and it'll be hard to beat, please let us know. Reach out at dirtysideofthetrack@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter or X or whatever it's called. Laura, we've been following you for a while on Twitter. You're a great follow, and it's great to interact with you. Thank you for making the time to do this with us.
Anytime. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I'll echo what Brian said. I'm just glad you're not a bot and you're actually real. So it was brilliant to meet you.
I am. Like,
Box. Okay, it was great to speak to Laura, and I just do need to clear up the bot comment. In fact, I messaged her on Twitter afterwards to say I wasn't trying to call you a bot. What I meant was she is phenomenal. She has been such a supporter of ours that I almost got to that self-doubt point where I'm like, this person just keeps liking all of our tweets and our Instagram stuff. There's nobody that can really like us two bozos that much. So I was almost convinced that it was just some sort of automated Twitter account that was just auto-liking our stuff. So, and then she came back on Twitter and laughed at me and said, that's fine, don't worry. So it's all good. But she was great. It was so much fun chatting to us. So we need more people to come on.
Yeah, she is phenomenal.
Gosh, yeah. I'm visualizing us being listened to in a lab while she's like doing some serious kind of like work. It's like that's mind blowing as well.
Whatever you're doing right now, Laura, don't make a mistake because of us.
Yeah.
Oh man, and so that brings us to the end of the episode.
Yeah.
What are we doing next week, Rob?
No idea. You're packing up and going off on vacation for a few days. We've maybe got a collab episode with the Canadian guys that we met up at Montreal, the F1 podcast. That's still got to take a little bit of ironing out. Not sure it's going to come out in time for next week. So we should just have to tune in next week and find out what we blabber on about.
I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate everybody listening. Rob, you're the man. I'm going on vacation for a few days. I cannot wait to do nothing. And it's going to be
control of Twitter.
Yes, Twitter is now under Rob's control. I may not even log in. Everyone have a great week. Be well. We'll talk to you shortly.